gotta wait for my camera to stop shaking. Anyway, in this video, we're going to talk about logging boots. Yes, I cut the hair off. It was aggravating me. I have had different variety of brands of boots. I've had Georgia. I've had Ariat boots. I've had like the cheap redheads that you can buy at Cabela's. I've actually had a pair of what are those ones called? They were cheap, but they were actually pretty good boots. Golden Retriever. Those were actually pretty good boots. Let's see. I know I've owned a couple other more brands, but the ones that stick out the most are Georgia. There are upsides and downsides to Georgia. It all depends on your foot and how much money you want to spend for a logging boot. And what I mean by logging boot is the big heel. For those that don't know what a logging boot is, these are the last ones that I purchased. These are made by Matterhorn. These are actually a really good cheap boot. At the time I purchased these, they were like $200. I've owned Matterhorns and I worked underground, so Matterhorn makes an underground boot. They last a pretty good while, so I figured if their underground boot lasts a while, these will too. And I got a year out of these boots, so I can say that I've been in the creek, I've been up in a tree, I've been in the right of way, I've been in gravel, I've been in dirt, I've been in mud, I've been in on the blacktop for long periods of time. This boot has took the abuse. So the reason why I am moving away from this boot to the Danner, this is what happens when you climb. It splits your boot. Are there boots out there for climbing? Absolutely. If you want to pay anywhere from like $300 to $800, there's a few custom boot companies out there that will make a boot to your foot. I mean, specifically, right down to the T on your foot. But like I said, you'll pay a lot of money for them. But you know, the boots that I'm talking about in this video are for guys that have a family, you're on a budget, you don't have a lot of money to spend on boots. I paid $150 for these Danners. The retail was like $279, and when they first came out, they were like a little over $300. Danner has a really good reputation when it comes to boots themselves. They make a wide variety of footwear. So the one thing that stuck out to me when I read reviews on this boot was the Vibrant Sole. I've actually had Vibrant Sole on the Ariats that I did have. The sole itself lasted really good. The only thing I didn't like about the Ariat boots is like on the side there was a stitch that went down. It was kind of like this where they stitch them, but up here it split, and once that split, the boot was done. If you know anything about leather, once you get a cut in them or a tear in them, they just fall apart basically. But one thing I do like about leather boots is that you can condition them. If you take care of your boot, they'll last you a really long time. I highly recommend, if you're going to be in a lot of water for a long period of time, get a rubber boot. You can take the boot off, dump the water out, wring your sock out, put it back on your foot, and it's not like misery. This is misery. Once these things get wet, you gotta wait for them to dry for a long time, and they don't make a rubber climbing boot out there. I've never seen one that would actually hold up to the hype of actually climbing trees or poles, if that's what you do for a living, if you're a utility man. But I did have rubber boots underground. They held up pretty good. As far as like durability, not really. Stick with a leather boot that has a steel toe or a composite toe that has a little bit more protection on your foot. I personally like composite. I hate steel toes. I hate being in steel toes, especially when you're on an incline and you're coming downhill. Your foot will slide to the front to the steel toe, and it'll put calluses on each side of your toe. And I can't stand it. I recently bought a pair of boots, pair of slip-on steel toes for my son. He's 14 and he has calluses on both sides of his feet now because he's wearing those boots so much. I have them on my feet from wearing steel toe because most of your underground boots have steel toes and you can't get them in composite toe because it's against the law. But there are certain boots that you can get to work underground with a composite. All depends on what job you have too. But anyways, logging boots are really good for inclines. If you don't do a whole lot of tree work as climbing, and I'm gonna show you that. Like you put the set of spurs on, or spikes, or climbers, whatever you prefer to call them. You know that the metal part of the bottom is in between here, in the middle of your foot. The heel keeps it from sliding back off your foot or forward. That's one thing I do like about logging boots. One thing I do like about this particular boot, it's a double steel shank, so like from here to here, it's going to have a plate in it. It'll keep your foot from like bending like this, and it won't be that bad on your foot when you're actually in a tree or on a pole for a couple of hours. Yeah, hours, because I've actually seen the utility guys be on a pole for a couple of hours. I've actually seen the guys that I've worked with be in a tree for a couple of hours, because it all depends on how big the tree is, or it all depends on how big the work is that you got to do while you're up on the pole. The utility guys that climb poles, they do have certain brands of boots that they buy, like Huffman. Huffman makes a really good boot, a really good climbing boot. The sole itself between here and here is like that thick, and some of those companies actually have like what they call a slip-on for their logging boot. It'll slip over their logging boot, giving it more comfort to be up on a pole for long periods of times. But would I highly recommend a logging boot, say that you do work construction? No, don't do it. Being on concrete, or if you're in gravels for long periods of time, you will regret wearing a logging boot on your heel, because your foot is like that. You know what I mean? You're literally standing on your heel, like your foot's not flat. If you have a high arch in your foot, you'll hate yourself. But as far as a logging boot for like tree work or your utility guy, I definitely highly recommend it. Even the guys that climb the poles and rehook up cables for like your internet, like fiber optic lines and stuff like that, highly recommend it, because some of those guys have to climb the pole and some of them don't. But a logging boot is pretty comfortable. Once you get used to wearing them, they're pretty comfortable. But I'll make a whole different video on logging boots itself, like the different brands, the ups and downs. But only time will actually tell with this boot here. I will do an actual separate video on those Matterhorn boots. You think that I'm actually playing when I say I had them for over a year. I really had them for a year. I got a year out of those boots. That's great for a boot. I'll do another video on these. Like, this will be like the before, and do an after video to see how long they actually last, because you know, some people blow up boots as like a big hype. You know, they lasted me for a long time, blah blah blah. And you know, some people go out and spend their money, they don't like what they like about the boot, and they go on there and they're keyboard jockeys and like, you know, your boot sucks, blah blah blah. But it all depends on how you take care of your boot too. If you're one of those guys that really don't care, just, I don't know what to say about that. But a logging boot is a pretty good boot if you're in, like, if you're a tree guy, a utility guy, or if you're a cable guy, especially if you got to climb a pole. But a logging boot will help you more than hurt you. But that's all I have for this video. You guys have a wonderful day.